What to grow in September? There's always so much to choose from flowers to edibles, seeds to plants, and too much choice can just make it difficult to decide, right? So in today's episode of my monthly video series, I've put together my list of just 5 great things that I think you absolutely have to plant in September. Hey everyone, how's it going? And welcome back. Search for what to sow in September, what to plant now, or what to grow in autumn, and you're going to find so much information. But realistically, you'll never be able to sow or grow everything that you find or get recommended to you. That's where having a small hand-picked list of things is just super useful. Plus, I get asked all the time for my recommendations for, say, autumn colour, or a plant that flowers until the first frosts. So let's get stuck in to my 5 plant picks for September. We are so used to growing edibles in full sun, just like this, aiming to give them loads of heat and light. But some crops actually prefer cooler, damper conditions, and that makes them ideal to sow and grow in the spring and the autumn months. Spinach is one of those crops. If it gets too much heat or sun, it'll bolt. In conditions like this, it certainly will. And that's where it produces flowers and seed really quickly, rather than those lovely lush green leaves that we're looking for. When it comes to eating spinach, I personally prefer to eat the baby leaves and add them into salads, rather than letting the leaves grow large and cooking them. They work really nicely as cut and come again crops that you can just pick leaves off as you want and add them into any dish. You can start spinach now in modules to plant out in a few weeks' time, or you can direct sow it, which is what I'm planning on doing here in the veg garden once I've cleared some space. It is such a simple crop to grow, and yet at the same time, baby spinach is something that's quite expensive in the supermarket. Since it's quick growing and it takes up very little room, it makes it the ideal food to grow at home. It'll taste better and it'll save you money. Typical. I go to make a video about what to grow in September and the autumn, and it's really hot and really sunny. So I've come into the shade to talk about my next plant. And that's because every month I like to suggest one plant that is properly just that little bit special or unusual. And I've got a great one for September, because right now is when this plant is looking just incredible. Except I don't actually have any in my own garden, so I'm going to be planting these myself, and the bulbs haven't even arrived yet. These amazing pink flowers are called colchicums, or the autumn crocus, and you can see exactly why they're called that. You know the way crocuses appear in the late winter, early spring, and the flower pushes through the ground first and then opens? Colchicums do just the same, but their flowers are actually way bigger and much more showy, but still really delicate. Plus, in autumn time, it is quite an unusual time to get that kind of oddity of a bulb flowering. Funny thing is though, they're actually not a crocus, they're related to lilies. But just look how incredible they are. These unusual, soft, pink, but quite large flowers that sit bare above the ground. They really do look like nothing else. Once the flowers die back, the leaves are going to emerge so that they can build up the plant's reserves for the year ahead. You can plant these bulbs into containers or into any kind of well-drained soil, and they'll return year after year. If you plant them now, you're not going to get a spectacular display until next year. But just imagine how beautiful they will be next autumn. A proper investment. And once they start flowering, a proper talking point. Each month through this year, Liz Zorab from her channel By Their Farm has joined me with her suggestion for one unmissable plant to grow. And September's no different.
Whilst I don't use an awful lot of mustards in salads or in cooking, there is one I really like, and this is it. It's ruby streaks, sometimes called oriental ruby streaks, but I like this so much. I'm growing a 10-foot row of it. It's very quick to germinate, and you can have a harvest within 3 to 4 weeks. And it's the very young leaves that are my favourites. They have an almost caramel taste and they aren't terribly peppery. But the more you chew them, the more peppery they become. And then as the leaves grow and get larger, the heat in them becomes more intense and, well, can get really quite fiery. So the youngest of the leaves I will pick and add to salads or to sandwiches. They're actually really nice if they're added to an egg sandwich. I also quite like them with sliced tomatoes, a little bit of sea salt on them, and one or two of the small leaves. And as for the larger leaves, which have this very distinct, pretty pattern on them, I will chop these and add them to stir fries. Not too many because I don't like terribly strong mustard taste in my food, but they are jolly good for adding some heat and some warmth. And you could, of course, add them to other side dishes. So something like cavolo nero kale with some of this in it would make a really good combination. One small packet of seeds goes a long way with these mustards. So don't be too tempted to sow all of it at once. If you sow it at fortnightly intervals, you will continue to get a harvest right through until the first frosts. And if you have an indoor space where you can grow them, like a greenhouse, a polytunnel, or on your kitchen windowsill, you can carry on sowing them and having fresh young leaves right through the winter.
That's actually a really cool suggestion because I never, and I mean never, grow mustard greens because personally I don't like that bitter hot flavour that they add to salads. But Ruby Streaks sounds properly different and I'm going to give it a go for myself. Thanks, Liz. My next plant is one that actually I'd originally planned to recommend back in August, but I've held it back until now. And that's because although it's already been flowering for a while, this is going to keep on flowering into the autumn. I want to recommend Echinacea. As the summer shifts into autumn proper, it's a really great thing to have proper long-lasting flowers for two big reasons. A, they're going to look nice and will bring a big hit of colour and a bit of pep into the garden like you can see, but also they're going to provide a great nectar source for pollinators and insects. Both very worthy reasons. This particular one is called Sunseeker's Orange, and rather than those usual magenta petals, these flowers have gorgeous dusky, rusty orangey red, and the flowers are just so striking and architectural. This is a perennial, so it's going to die back in the winter but pop back up in spring. And if you already have established plants, these can be divided in the autumn. And that's what I plan to do so that I can increase my numbers and add them through the garden. It's a nice compact plant, so it doesn't take up too much room. And that means it'll also equally work well in a container. I hope you agree, this is a really brilliant addition to your garden. Autumn is a great time to be planting perennials. The soil still has plenty of warmth in it, so plants that you plant will establish nicely. But it's also a season when there is plenty of rainfall, or at least there certainly is in Ireland, and that means that your newly planted plants aren't going to dry out. So I'm going to recommend a really tough, easy to grow perennial that's massively popular. You're going to see it everywhere, and with good reason. And it's Verbena bonariensis. These smallish purple clusters of flowers begin to flower, well, mid to late summer, and you can see they sit on top of these long, slender stems that can be about 3 or 4 foot in height or higher. Saying that, if you want something more compact, there's a lovely variety called Lollipop, which is only about 18 inches tall. It's a superb plant for interplanting amongst any other kind of perennials or grasses. As you can see, the flowers just seem to, well, hover or float above everything. The flowers are really popular with pollinators, but then come the winter, when this plant dies back, its structure is really still strong and it's tough enough to stay intact through the winter. So it creates this lovely, cool sculptural form. The seed heads are great for birds and they look brilliant when they're edged with a little bit of frost or snow. So don't be tempted to cut it back when you're doing that winter tidy up. I've got loads of these plants dotted around the garden and I love them. I would be very surprised if you don't love them too. 5 really great plants that are going to be perfect for planting and enjoying in September. And before you go, if you're looking for even more planting inspiration and beauty, click on either of these videos for more suggestions of things to grow each month that are going to be brilliant. And Until next time, see you later.